Whenever I started out on this whole journey of going to preaching school and all of that, which I never really sought out to be a preacher or anything, I just wanted to go to school to learn a bit about more Bible. But while I was there, some really good men taught me all about the Bible, and they taught me how to preach from the Bible, and so here we are. But kind of during all of that, during that time, I'd been told that I'd make a really good preacher. That I'd make a good preacher because I would be able to preach from conviction. That my past life and the things that I had done would enable me to speak to people from experience. Albeit it wasn't good experience, but I did have that, and I thought, I might be able to use that. And since I've been in this, I have been able to preach from conviction. I really have. But sometimes, and there are times when it doesn't come from positive things that I've done. Sometimes that convicted preaching comes from times when I have personally failed miserably. And so this sermon was kind of born out of something that I failed at. Now, I'm not going to really go into detail about what it was, but it wasn't just me failing in something for myself personally. It was something that I failed the Lord in, and it really bothered me. But it sparked a few thoughts that I'm going to share with you this morning that I think all of us will probably be able to relate to a little bit. But this morning, what we're talking about is this. We're talking about denying Jesus by our negligence. Denying Jesus by our negligence. That sounds really negative. And up front, a lot of this is going to sound negative at first, but bear with me. I looked this up because I did want to get an accurate definition of the word negligence. Webster defines negligence as this: a failure to exercise the care that a reasonably prudent person would exercise in like circumstances. Now, the Bible, at least in the New American Standard, uses this word in about 4 different ways. There are several Greek words that you see translated as the word neglect or neglect. But what one of those words for neglect means is to be unconcerned or even forget. To be unconcerned or forget. Now, we're not going to work off of any one specific passage this morning, but I do want to talk about how negligence can be a way in which we deny Jesus. Negligence. Because really what it is, it's a failure. It's a failure to do what we ought to do, especially when we know better. Or when we know that we have a responsibility, but we don't do anything. Negligence. There are times when we do things that proclaim we love God and we love Jesus. Some of the things or the good works that we do would say that we are followers of Christ because it might be something that Jesus would do. However, there are other times when we might not do something or we are negligent, and now instead of proclaiming Jesus, it's like we are denying Jesus. I think the last thing that probably anybody in this building here this morning would want to do is deny Jesus. I'm probably confident in saying that, and I am. Okay? But I believe it's possible. I believe it's possible that we could deny Him just as much as we proclaim Him. When we talk about denying Jesus, I think a lot of some scene in their minds where maybe they are presented with this extreme scenario, right? When you're standing before somebody and you're going to proclaim Jesus and die, you deny Jesus and live. I think we all we may go to that extreme when we think about this. But what we need to understand is that denying Jesus does not have to go to that extreme. It can be much more subtle than that. And negligence can be very bad for our faith because sometimes it can be very passive. And it may not be something that we necessarily realize that we're doing and we can be negligent in that way. And so I think it's good. I think it's good for us to be aware of some of the different ways that we could deny Jesus because of things that we do not do. Okay? Because I know that's not what we want to do. We don't want to do that. All right? But we may not think about those things a little lower. Thank you. Blow your ears off. Anyway. But we may not think about those things that we do. Okay? So, how does this happen? How is it that we can deny Jesus by the things that we don't do or by us being negligent? Okay? I think one of the ways that this happens is when fear gets the best of us. When fear gets the best of us. Sometimes fear can get the best of us in different situations. And sometimes it is when we are faced with a decision to speak up or not. When we're faced with a decision to speak up. It reminds me of what Jesus had said in Matthew chapter 10, verses 32 and 33. He said, "So everyone who acknowledges me before men," he says, "I will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny him before my Father who is in heaven." I think there are times when we have an opportunity to say, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. I follow God. I follow the Bible. Yes, that my principles in life are based on the Bible. I think there are times when we could either speak up and proclaim that and be very clear about who and what we are, but sometimes fear gets the best of us. And maybe you've been in situations like that. Maybe you've been in situations before where you could have said that, but you shrink back. You say, I don't want to be that guy, right now in this situation, and I don't want people to look at me funny if I say what I am. I don't know how that might affect this or my job even. And I'm just not going to go there right now. And so, rather than speaking up and being very straightforward about who and what we are, sometimes fear gets the best of us. All right? Now, probably most of us in our minds would like to think that in the moment, we would be like what Peter and John said when they were brought before the council in Acts chapter 4. After being commanded to no longer speak or teach in the name of Jesus, they quickly responded and said this in Acts 4:19 and 20. They said, "Look, whether it is right in the sight of God to give heed to you rather than to God, you be the judge. For we cannot stop speaking about what we have seen and heard." You weren't going to keep them boys down. You weren't going to keep them down. And I mean right in the face, absolutely could have punished them or mistreated them any way that they wanted to. They said, "Look, we're sorry, but on this one we can't do that. We can't do that. We're gonna keep speaking about Jesus. We have to. How could we not? We saw the guy rise from the dead. I'm sorry. We're gonna keep speaking about him." You see, I think we would all like to think that we would have that kind of boldness and courage in the moment. That it wouldn't matter who we're in front of, or that we would say, yeah, I'm going to speak up. I'm going to say anything about Jesus, but sometimes it just doesn't go according to plan. Doesn't. Because in certain situations, what happens? We get scared. We're afraid. That fear kind of starts to set in, and we don't want a relationship to turn south. We don't want something good that maybe we've got going to be altered, and we don't want to offend anyone sometimes. All right? But what we might not realize, is that when we don't speak up, in those times, when we know we should, when we don't come right out and just say it and speak up or proclaim Jesus, we deny Jesus. Because Jesus expects that if we're going to say that we follow Him, that we would at least be willing to publicly say that we do. That's what He would expect. But fear overtakes us at times. We neglect to do the very thing that we should do, and sometimes that's publicly speak up and acknowledge who Jesus Christ is and that we follow Him. All right, when else? This kind of negligent attitude come in? How else could we deny Jesus by what we don't do? I think a big one and a hard one is when we fail to deny ourselves. We fail to deny ourselves. Sometimes, if we want to follow Jesus, the first thing that we've got to do is work on putting ourselves to the side. And I'll tell you, it is really easy. It's very easy. It's easy to proclaim Jesus until proclaiming Jesus means that we've got to deny ourselves. It's really easy to do that. Until we've got to deny ourselves, until we give up something that we like, and that makes following Jesus a little bit harder, doesn't it? You remember the passage in Mark chapter 8, in verse 34, when Jesus called the crowd to Him and His disciples, He said, look, if anyone would come after me, the first thing that He says, what? Let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. And this is one of the hardest things for us to do. It's a very tough thing for us to do. It's hard to put aside what we want to do for the sake of what Jesus wants us to do. All right? Because it demands things. It demands that we give up things that are pleasurable to us, to give up things that are not in line with God. Jesus says we've got to give up things that we want to do our way, and we've got to do it God's way. We've got to die to those things, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's a daily grind to do that. Okay? What did Paul say? I die what? I die daily. It's a daily thing. It's hard. And when we constantly feed and fuel our desires and what we want and what we neglect, when we neglect to deny ourselves, Jesus, we're not going to be able to truly follow Him like we need to if we don't deny ourselves. Okay, He says, look, we're told to deny self, not Jesus. But sometimes by not denying ourselves, that's exactly what we end up doing, isn't it? Unfortunately. Number 3. What's another way that we could deny Jesus by our negligence? I think this one right here. That's number 2. When we fail to help those in need. That would be number 3. I messed up, Trey. I know you're laughing at me. When we fail to help those in need, that's number 3. Okay? In James chapter 2, there's a section in there where he's talking about mercy. And he kind of starts that in verse 13, and he says this. He says, for judgment will be merciless to one who has shown no mercy. And he says, mercy triumphs over judgment. And then he goes into this little bit about what a saving faith looks like. And he kind of has this illustration, an example of what that is, but he's talking about mercy still. And he says this, he says, what use is it, my brethren, if someone says he has faith, but he has no works? Can that faith save him? And then he goes into it right here. He says, if a brother or sister is without clothing and in need of daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and be filled, and yet you do not give them what is necessary for their body, he says, what use is that? even so, if it has no works, it is dead, being what? Being by itself. So he's talking about mercy and how showing mercy to someone is giving them what they need, what is necessary. So sometimes how we might deny Jesus is failing to show mercy to someone and giving them what they need. Why? Because that's what Jesus would do. That's why. And so sometimes it's clothing. Sometimes it's food that people are in need of. And if you help people with that, that's showing mercy to them, and that's a good thing. But there might be times when we just say, go in peace, be warmed and be filled. Hope you stay warm, hope you can get something to eat. And James says, what even is that? You think that's what they need, a nice gesture? No, he says if you don't give them what they need and give them what is necessary for their body, you're not helping them at all. Basically, what James is getting at is that you can confess to love Jesus all day long, but if you don't show it by your works, then it means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Chalk it up as an L. It's a loss. It doesn't mean anything. And I'm telling you, folks, that right there, what James is describing, that has hit me like a ton of bricks before. It really has. I had to wrestle with this at one point in time. Okay, when I didn't do something that I knew I should have done, and I knew I should have helped somebody out that was in need, and I didn't do it. And this has happened to me. This has happened to me while being in ministry. And I mean, as a preacher, this has happened to me. And when it happened, and after it happened, in my mind, here's what I thought in my mind. It was like, yeah, go ahead, Dylan. Yeah, go ahead. You put that suit on. Put your preaching suit on. Put your pole-on shoes on. Yeah, go put them on. Do you remember that person last week? You remember that person that was in need? You didn't make a move on that person. You remember that person? Well, I was tearing myself apart. I was ripping myself anew. I mean, I was on myself really, really bad. And in my mind, I just kept going over. I was like, yeah, some kind of Christian you are. Well, you sure look the part. That's what I was feeling. It was a tough day. And it hurt. And it hurt so much because I knew that I failed the Lord. I failed Him. And I was slapped in the face. I mean hard. I was slapped in the face with, you say that you're a Christian. You say that you follow Jesus, but when it came time to show that you do, you didn't do anything. What good is faith if you don't do anything that shows you have it? And what really kind of stings about all of that is that we talk about this, right? And we preach about these things. We put on our Sunday clothes. We come to Bible class. We go to worship, and we teach and we preach. But I'll tell you, the one thing in that was that, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many worship services you attend. It doesn't matter how Bible classes or sermons that you teach or preach. It doesn't matter. If you don't pay attention and if you don't do what is necessary, you can still deny Him by the things that you don't do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many classes you go to. It doesn't matter how many sermons you preach. If you don't help somebody out who might be in need, you can still deny Jesus by the things you don't do. The very things that Jesus tells us to do. You see, we can say that we profess Jesus, but sometimes when we pass up on those opportunities that are presented to us, and I mean right in front of our faces sometimes Sometimes when we pass up on those, it's like we're denying Him. Every time we neglect to do some of the good things that we know that the Bible talks about, we know it's something that Jesus taught, and we know that in that moment we probably should act, but we don't. Those are the times when we deny Jesus. It's in those moments. It's in those times. And I'll tell you, if you've ever experienced this yourself, hopefully you feel this way, you feel sorrowful about it. It doesn't make you feel good. I mean, godly sorrow, because when you realize what you've done, and you realize that you should have acted, it hurts. It does not feel good. And you know what I compare it to? I compare it to when Peter denied Jesus. That's kind of what I compare it to. If you can remember, take your mind back there. You remember in the Last Supper, all right, Jesus is talking about how he's going to die, and this has to happen. And he told them in Mark chapter 14, 27 to 28, he said, look, you're all going to fall away because it's written. And then he says, but after I am raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee. Okay? But of course, we know what happened with Peter after that. They leave, and then Jesus is taken. Peter followed at a distance. He's in the courtyard, and one of the servant girls recognizes who he is. You are Jesus too. He denied it. I neither know nor understand what you're talking about. The bystanders that were standing around, they said, no, this is one of them. He denied it a second time. And they come back around a third time and say, no, you're Galilean. You are one of them. And then Peter began to heap curses upon himself and swears by God Almighty that he does not know this man, Jesus Christ. And what happened? Immediately, the rooster crowed a second time, and then Peter remembered. He remembered what Jesus said to him. Before a rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And the text says that he began to weep. He started weeping after that. Why did that hurt Peter? Why was Peter weeping? Well, because earlier, that very same day, look what he told Jesus when Jesus told them that they were all going to fall away. Look what Peter says in the following verses. He says this, even though all may fall away, yet I will not. I'm not going to fall away, Jesus. They might. I'm not going to do it. That he kept insistently saying, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. That's why Peter was weeping. Right there. Because he told the Lord to his face, I'm not going to deny you. You're crazy. I'm not denying you. You think fear got the best of Peter? Big time. It's no different with us. It hurts when we fail. It hurts. Because just like Peter, there may have been a time in your life when you said, I'll do anything for you, Jesus. I'll go to the ends of the earth for you, Lord. I mean, think back to when you were first converted. Think back when you first came up out of that water. I'm going to go do anything for Jesus. But then sometimes, what happens? You don't do that, do you? Fear sometimes sets in. We get afraid, and sometimes it just doesn't happen, and it hurts us when you don't do that. It hurts when you deny Jesus. And you may even weep over it. Now look, like I said, a lot of that front was quite negative. Okay? we've talked about failures. Okay, but here's a little bit of hope in this, okay? Don't preach a hard message without, preaching on hope. That's something I learned while I was going through all that preaching stuff, Russ. Anyway, yes, sometimes we are going to fail miserably. You've got to accept that. You're going to fail. Okay? And you're going to do it in many ways, probably. All right? But it doesn't mean that you have to live in that. You don't have to live in that failure. Okay? It doesn't have to define you or who you are as a Christian. Now, you need to wrestle with your mistakes. You need to wrestle with your mistakes. Let them convict you and contemplate on them, but don't dwell on them forever because there's still good things that you can do. I mean, look at Peter's life after that. Didn't he still take the gospel to the Gentiles and went to Cornelius' house and he did all this great stuff? Yeah. Did he fail? Did he fail Jesus? Did he deny him 3 times? Sure did. Okay, but you can't live in that failure, all right? You can't dwell on those. Look, you need to understand God can forgive you. God can forgive you. And if you have messed up, what you need to do is humbly go to God in prayer and say, Lord, I'm sorry. I messed up big time. I should have done this. I didn't do that. Please forgive me. And help me get over this. And help me to have a better heart next time. And then you know what you need to do after that prayer? You need to just get up and go. You need to get up and go. You don't live in that. Okay? You ask God for forgiveness and you get up and you go. And you try to do better next time. Okay? You can't dwell on them forever. You need to acknowledge them and learn from them. All right? But trust me, look, I'm like the world's worst, okay, at letting things get me down and sometimes keep me down. All right? And we'll kind of end with this, okay? It has been some years, but in high school, I played on the infield. I played baseball, okay, and I played on the infield, and I played third base, okay? If you've played baseball, and especially if you've played third base, you know that sometimes on third base, you get some shots hit at you. All right, you get some, screamers hit at you down the line, okay? Now, I didn't miss many. All right, there wasn't too many balls that got by me. I didn't misplay many balls. I didn't miss many, okay? But there were times. There were a few times that either, there was a bad hop or something, and I misplayed it or whatever, and maybe it got through, or maybe I mishandled the ball, trying to roll up a double play or something and throw it over to second. Maybe I overthrew one over to first base, okay? Didn't happen much, but it did happen. And the times that it did happen, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Tore me up. I did not like it. I don't like to lose, and I don't like to make mistakes. All right, especially back then when I was playing and stuff. I mean, I was real meticulous about some of that, but it tore me up. And I mean, something that would happen, this would happen in the 2nd inning. Well, it's the 5th inning. And it's still in. And you can tell, it's written all over my face. Dylan, what's wrong? Booted that ball. Man, that's baseball language, anyway. Dave will appreciate that. But people could tell, and I was still upset over that, okay? And I can remember my coach telling me, and he would say, look, and I remember this, he would tell me this. He said, listen, you have got to be, and I remember he would stand like this and he'd get in my face and say, you have got to be quick to forget in this game. That was profound. You've got to be quick to forget in this game. You can't sit there and dwell on that, okay? You've got to let it roll off because, listen, the next batter's up, okay? We're still playing. The game is still going on. We may even be winning. You've got to be quick to forget this stuff. I remember he would try to encourage me too and be like, look, you're still a good player. Okay? I'm not taking you out just because you made a mistake. But you're going to have to be quick to forget and let it go and let's get going. Why? And because it was affecting my play. A simple mistake that was, all right, just get up, go again. But I was dwelling on that, and it was affecting the way that I played. It even affected the boys around me. I was the leader on the team, so if the leader's down, well, that kind of affects the morale of the team, and it would affect me going and all that stuff. Okay, what I'm saying is we can't let our failures weigh on us so much that it affects the way that we play. Does that make sense? I hope it does. We can't let it affect the way we play. You think of God as a coach for a second. Think of God as a coach, all right? God is not going to pull you out of the game just because you make a mistake. He's not taking you out of the lineup. He's not moving you off to 9-hole. Okay? He's not taking you out. And look, when a coach doesn't give up on you, that'll make you want to play for him that much more. It'll make you want to play for him that much harder. When a coach doesn't give up on you. What a great coach that we play for, right? You can say amen to that one. What a great coach that we play for. One that still believes in us even when we make a mistake to make the play when it counts. To do the right thing when it counts. He still believes in us. What a great coach we have. Yes, there are times that because of our negligence we may deny Jesus. But all we can do in that is recognize our faults, learn from them, ask God to forgive us, and keep moving on because there's still a whole lot of good that we can do. There's still a whole lot of good that you can do. Don't let it define you, and don't dwell on it. Listen, you may have failed, and if that's dwelling on you right now this morning, you can ask for prayers. Let somebody know, okay? Maybe you're a person here this morning that's like, you know what? I think I do need to start denying myself, and it's time I start rolling with Jesus. And if that's you, you're in the right place and we can help you. And we hope you'll let us know with whatever you need, okay? Let's stand and sing our invitation song.